for the Florida Gators to take on the Tennessee Volunteers Saturday evening at Neyland Stadium. It should be a good one. Both teams are ranked coming into this. The Vols have played pretty well so far through two games. I'm Dan Harrelson alongside Nick Taylor, and let's talk about this game with the voice of the Volunteers. That's Bob Kessling. Bob, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for calling. Thanks for coming on.
Well, let's talk about this big matchup Saturday evening. Of course, the Gators have won 7 straight in this rivalry. First time these two teams have been ranked in the same meeting since 2007. How hungry are the Volunteer fans and even the team to go out there and bring home a W inside Neyland Stadium?
Well, Florida sent back a couple thousand tickets on Monday. Those were gobbled up in minutes, so that tells you a little bit about how hungry the fans are. You know, it's been a while since Tennessee's been ranked 2008. It's been a while since Tennessee has been on such a big national stage as this game. And so I just think that these fans were so accustomed to championship football back in the 90s, and it slipped a little bit earlier in this decade, and now they're really hungry to get back. And you just feel it, the buzz around the community about this big game and playing against Florida. So I think it's a big game. I think it's going to be a big weekend for Tennessee fans. Well, Bob, a lot of talk obviously is about Tyler Bray and the improvement in the Tennessee offense with Eric Patterson and such, but our focus on Tennessee is about the defense, because I think they're going to be as good down the road as the defense can take them. Talk about bringing in Sal Sunseri, another guy that worked under Nick Saban, similar to Derek Dooley, and how you expect the defense to progress, and do you think the defensive success will be a key as the season goes on? I don't think it's necessary. Of course, they're making the adjustments in the 3-4, and last year, Tennessee, I don't want to particularly use the word passive, but they were a little bit protective of giving up big plays. So they at times they played a little soft and played a little back, and they weren't in the attack mode. They had 9 interceptions all year last season. Through 2 games this year, they have 5 interceptions. So that tells you a little bit more about the fact that put pressure on the quarterback. This is much more of an attack style defense, which is led by really a good group of linebackers. Kurt Magid, A.J. Johnson, Jaquez Smith. Those guys have really played well. Johnson and Magid were freshman All-Americans. Now they're playing their sophomores. Magid has a turf toe, so he's a little bit slow. But Herman Lathers is back. He was slow last week with a shoulder injury. They hope he can play. So that with those 4 linebackers and the junior college players, they have restocked the defensive front with. They think their front seven's pretty good, and I think that that's going to be key. And again, Sal Sunseri is on this attack mode because he knows if they do give up a big play, that means Tyler Bray has the ball more, and that's a good thing for Tennessee.
Well, Bob, you mentioned having the ball more with Tyler Bray. Let's talk about the offense. Bray through 2 games, 643 yards through the air. Justin Hunter, 219 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns, along with 6 Tyler Bray touchdowns through the air. How about this offense? Where do you see it right now? And it's obviously pretty good, but can you compare it to a previous Tennessee football team's offense in the past?
Well, you know, you hate doing those comparisons yet because these guys haven't come on and won the big games like Easterler and Peyton Manning and T. Martin and some of those guys did. But potentially, this offense is as explosive as any Tennessee passing attack. It's been a long, long time. Cordero Patterson, Justin Hunter are big NFL-looking type wide receivers. Michael Rivera has really worked in his game at tight end. So when you have 3 weapons like that, you've got to concentrate on all of those guys. And if you spend a lot of double team on those wide receivers, then they're going to send Rivera right down the middle of the field. And Tyler Bray, he's a California kid. He's used to playing 7-on-7 football. And while this is a structured offense, suddenly Tyler Bray can get into that backyard mode. And if you're open, he's going to find you and tip it to you. And he's got enough faith in his arm strength, that he's not afraid to try and squeeze it into places and make throws. So, and what that's done for this wide receiving corps, they know that if the play is not designed for them, they still better run hard and better run their routes because they might still get the ball. And if a receiver thinks he got a chance to get the ball, he's going to run harder than he would if he knows there's no chance receivers, and that's been the strength of this offense so far. You don't know who's going to get the ball and where they're going to get it, and how many times they're going to get it. So that has really been a good thing for this offense. I mean, they rolled up over 500 yards in offense in the first two games. Now, this will be a much different test on Saturday against a very good Florida front seven, but I think Tennessee will cause the Gators a lot of problems.
Well, the offense kind of ties into my next question because I'm often wondering with the progression of the defense, how many times can the offense outscore the opponent? And if the offense keeps clicking, just looking at scenarios after the second week of the season, is Tennessee a possible dark horse to win the East and perhaps even, like say, if they were to lose to Alabama but win the other games? I mean, they could rematch Alabama and Atlanta and pull off some kind of, I don't want to say miracle, but maybe they are a dark horse for the, to make a run to Miami. I mean, I know it sounds a little far-fetched, but do you think that's possible?
I think you're getting out ahead of this thing a little bit. Let's you got to get to the Florida game first. There'll be a big measuring stick on this game Saturday. They'll be able to figure out exactly where this team is and how much improvement have they really made. And while they had a really good test in the first game against NC State, last week's game, let's face it, wasn't a very big test against a very much outmanned Georgia State team. This will be a game in which, Florida's got big, strong guys, fast guys, and they've had some great recruiting classes. And so I think this is the game that Tennessee is really concentrating on. If Tennessee can win this game, now you start maybe, anybody that wins this Tennessee-Florida game is automatically a contender in the SEC East. I mean, that's the way it's been historically since 1992, and will be the same thing again this year. If you win this game, you stay in the hunt for the SEC East. If you lose this game, you really got to uphill climb all season long. So that's kind of how Tennessee's approaching it, and I don't think they're thinking about Alabama or Atlanta or bowl games or anything. I think they're solely focused on the Gators.
Just a quick follow-up. Do you have, after 2 weeks, do you have any kind of early impressions on who you think are the front runners to play for the national championship? Do you have any thoughts on that? Obviously, the Bama LSU game will be a big game in that puzzle, but what are your early projections on that?
Well, I think Alabama, I think everybody with how they took Michigan apart, I don't think anybody anticipated that. And I don't know if Southern Cal's been tested that much, but I think a lot of people like the Trojans, and they've got a lot of talent. So to me, those will be the two teams. But football's funny. That ball bounces a lot of different ways. A lot of times you think somebody who foresaw Arkansas losing this past week. So if you don't go out and play, and if you don't get ready to play, be mentally focused to play, a lot of bad things can happen to you, especially in this league. So there's a lot of football to be played by a lot of teams, and so you can't. If you start looking down the road too far, you're going to run into a wall you didn't see. So you better take care of your business this week.
Well, Bob, my last question is about Saturday's game with the Tennessee-Florida rivalry. Does it feel like it used to when Steve Spurrier matched up against Phillip Fulmer? Because it kind of has that feel nationally now. I mean, it's two ranked teams, number 18 and 23. It's not like it's top 10 teams like it was in those days. But is that feel back for this game in the Big Orange Country?
Well, I think there's always a little spark when the Florida Gators come to town. I think, and probably the spark now is the fact that Tennessee does have this losing streak to them, and they would love to beat them. But people, Steve Spurrier's deal here was a little bit different since he was a Tennessee guy out of Johnson City, and would throw those gigs out every once in a while. He gigs everybody, but he was gigging Tennessee pretty good back in those days, and so he was special to beat Florida. They were special to beat them because they were so good. I mean, they really elevated the bar in this league. They brought speed and the passing games and all those type of things, and athletes up front. I mean, I think Spurrier did a tremendous job of kind of changing the face of SEC football back in the 90s. And so Florida has been a standard bearer, and they've been really good for 2 decades now. And I think this game is special. I think because of the fact that it is the first SEC game, and this kind of sets the pace whether or not you're going to stay in the race or be an early contender for the SEC championship. That's why this game is so important.
Well, Bob, one last thing on that subject. With with back in the 90s, if you had that 14 playoff like we will see in 2014 coming up with the top four teams in a playoff mode, I think Tennessee may have made it a couple times in the mid-90s as like a 4 or 3 seed, and Phil Fulmer could have played for more national championships if they had that system at that point. That's how good that Florida Tennessee
I don't think
was.
any question. Obviously, they were knocking on the door when they were just playing with 2 teams basically. So yeah, I mean, you go back and look at some of those old games that they sometimes play on the weekends. You see some of the teams and some of the players that Tennessee had back in the 90s and the early 2000s. Those are really, really talented football teams. And Tennessee had a lot of 10, 11-win seasons that they just fell short of winning the national championship or getting to the SEC championship game. So yeah, I think that's true. And I'd like to see them even expand the playoffs even more. I think they need to have more than 4 teams, and we'll see if that eventually happens. But I think there were a lot of, last year I was just not saying that Alabama LSU didn't deserve to play, but I was one of the people I wasn't too thrilled, even though I like to see SEC teams win the national championship. I wasn't too thrilled with the rematch. I thought that Alabama had a shot to win get into the championship game in the regular season, and they didn't win it. And so somebody else should have had a chance to play for the national championship. But they didn't ask me my opinion, and I just don't like rematches, and thought that was unfair to LSU. But Alabama came out and certainly proved in that game they were the better team on that day. So we'll see how this plays out. I mean, the one thing about college football, if you don't like change, you got to watch something else, because college football is changing all the time and will continue to change.
I have one last question for Dan. If you could just give us a couple of keys to the game on Saturday, and what you and if you don't mind, kind of give us in your mind how you think you see the game unfolding.
Well, I think one of the biggest things in the game is, can Tennessee's wide receivers get off the line of scrimmage? Justin Hunter and Gerald Patterson, while they're tall, they're kind of skinny and maybe not the fastest guys off the line of scrimmage. Now, they've been able to get off the line of scrimmage against NC State and Georgia State, because I think both of those teams were scared to death that they would just run by their secondary, which they did at times. But I don't think Florida's going to be scared of that. I think they have guys that can run with these guys. They're going to try to be physical with them. It'll be the most physical game that Patterson and Hunter have played in their lives, probably. And because they're going to target those 2 guys to try and make sure they don't get off the line of scrimmage. So that brings the factor, will that disrupt Tyler Bray, the passing game, and can Tyler Bray make those adjustments? I think that's one of the main keys to this game. And the other thing I think is important is, can Florida consistently move the football? If Florida has a bunch of 3 and outs and they punt the ball and give it right back to Tennessee, I think Tennessee's going to be able to score a lot of points. So those are the 2 biggest factors to me. Can Florida contain Tennessee's wide receivers, and can the Gators get enough first downs to keep their defense off the field against Tennessee's high-power offense?
Thank you so much for coming on this afternoon, Bob. It's been a pleasure. You're a legend in the SEC. I remember the days